Hello, hi. We're starting a little bit late, but it's all good. We've got a lot to share today, and I've even got my other laptop there if you can. Yeah, so I had such a great time on Tuesday. We had huge numbers. We've had 30,000 people even see the Getting Started with Azure, and I did promise you a really great session today, and we're going to see how incredibly powerful GitHub Actions is now. So this session is about using GitHub Actions and databasing with Terraform. And one of my colleagues, Julian, actually did a really great Terraform session for you. And we're going to take that and also what we did with the DevOps starters, and we're going to really show you how to get started with that. So let's get started. As before, follow me on @RoryPretty on Twitter, and let's start. So you should see my screen, you should see and hear me, and let's start with the agenda first. So we've got an introduction, a little bit about Terraform. We're going to go through what is a GitHub action and the specifics around it. Then we're going to also look at how do you provision Azure resources, and then deploy a sample Spring Boot application. We're all going to we're going to focus on the Microsoft Learn module that I'll put a link at the end of it. And that gives you an opportunity to go through everything that we've seen now, hands-on with your own time, and really get down and dirty and learn how what we're going to do here and how to get started. So first, let's talk about, and let's set the stage, infrastructure as code. So why should you actually use infrastructure as code? So what is infrastructure as code? If you imagine a server and it's sitting in a data center, and you want to provision that server or configure that server, you want to do it in code. And that code will define a few aspects of that server or that application, and then you can get certain benefits from using code to manage your infrastructure. Now, typically, these are the benefits that you have. You can reproduce your environment. So no longer do you can say to someone, but it works on my machine, it has to work on your machine. You can not only reproduce your local environment, but you can reproduce your dev, quality testing, staging, or production environments. And you can make sure that you use the same environment as you're using on your dev machine as production, because you really want to make sure that nothing weird happens. Oh, wait, the library changed on prod or on staging. You want it exactly as you were testing. The next real benefit is automation. So I want to just click or push based on an event, and that event then would trigger CI/CD, continuous integration. So build and run tests, and then CD, which is continuous deploy. So deploy to your infrastructure. And part of the CI/CD is also provision your infrastructure. And we'll go through exactly all of those different pathways to do that as part of this session. Trackable. You make a change to your underlying infrastructure, you want to be able to track it, and you can do that with like GitHub. So imagine having a server and increasing the memory of that server, and you can now track who did that, who increased the memory of the server via GitHub. So that's really one of the benefits, a really great benefits of infrastructure as code. Then you want to define it in a higher level language, and the Terraform language is called HCL, HashiCorp configuration language. It's a really great language because it allows you to define your resources and the relationship with each of those resources quite well, to be able to create a hierarchy and a daisy chain of dependencies to manage your underlying infrastructure. Then you've got a workflow. So we're going to go through a really nice workflow, and the demo that we're going to do is pretty simple. It's just sequential, but you can actually have a multiple stage workflow that allows you to base your infrastructure choices on conditions. So you can say, if staging was built correctly, then go to production. And it allows you also really to get a better feel for your infrastructure, and to make sure, ooh, I've gone blurry there for some reason. Hello, yes, camera, come back. And make sure also that you can kind of add some conditional statements to your workflow. And then on providers here, now this is really great, and we're going to go through some of the providers. Providers means you can run the same code on multiple clouds. You should be able to, if you just change the provider, run it on Google, IBM, Red Hat, AWS, Azure, just by changing it. And that's really one of the powers of infrastructure as code, to move from cloud providers to providers where necessary. Not that I'm saying don't use Azure. I'm a big Azure fan. I work for them. But you can, if you want to, use them where necessary. So typically you have three pipelines to get infrastructure as code. You have a provisioning pipeline, you have a build pipeline, and a deploy pipeline. Now, there might be multiple parts to that provision pipeline, to that build pipeline, and to that deploy pipeline. And I get this question asked often: how do I mix and match the different pipelines to get to my ideal infrastructure? And the simple answer, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. So I've got a very nice little diagram here, and this shows a mature version of this. This isn't the demo, the version that we're going to do for our demo. It's a much more simple version for our demo, but I'd like to go through this and show you exactly how you could imagine your pipelines and multiple pipelines through that and create your infrastructure as code. So first we have something called an inner loop. You can see at the top there, and the inner loop is really you developing on your local PC and getting your code ready to push it to your central repository. So in this case here, our central repository is GitHub. So stage one, step one, you've got an inner loop. You might have a dev cluster or just your local laptop. You've got code, test, debug, and then once you're ready, then you do a pull request or a PR into GitHub. And then it leaves your sphere of interest, influence, and then you can start to use the actual pipelines. And the first pipeline that you're going to do is the build pipeline. You can see there I've got the same color coding as we did before. And the build pipeline there, and in this example there, we're going to build a Kubernetes cluster, and the build pipeline there might build your container image, and then once it's finished building it, then it's going to scan it, run some tests against it, and then it is going to pass it off to the deploy section. Now, at the same time, the test and scan there is going to trigger off some GitHub Actions and some internal workflow, and the GitHub Actions there, once the build pipeline, is going to run your Terraform build, and you are going to then combine your build artifacts that you have here with your Terraform infrastructure. Now, the novelty and the real difficulty comes on which do you build first? Do you build your code first, or do you build your infrastructure? And in our demo that we're going to do, I'm going to show you how you can actually set up events to say only build your infrastructure on a push to master, and then build your app on every subsequent pull request. That way you can kind of get a nice workflow going without having to worry about is my server actually created before I build my application. Then you're also going to, at the same time, run some compliance. So in here we've got Azure policies, so policies for compliance and governance. And then that is going to push in your deploy pipeline to your either staging environment or your production environment. And then we do all of that again via monitoring to the feedback loop back to your inner loop. And this is typically the kind of the infrastructure workflow that you get with GitHub Actions or Azure DevOps and also Terraform. And you can see here, we've got our three pipelines. Now, you might have multiple pipelines for that also. So the build, you might want to build your source or compile your JavaScript or a lot of other options. Your deploy, you might want to deploy multiple artifacts. Your provisioning with your Terraform, you might want to deploy not only your staging environment, but production environment. In this example that we're going to do, the demo, we're only going to have one of each. We're going to have one build and deploy and one provision pipeline. But you might want multiple going forward. So let's go to the next step here, and let's now discuss the provision pipeline. So we're going to use Terraform as our provisioning tool, but you could also use Azure Resource Manager. Now, Azure Resource Manager, and we saw that on Tuesday, it is a script written kind of like Terraform that defines your resources and the relationship between each one of those resources. We also support Terraform, And Terraform really is the gold standard when it comes for infrastructure as code. It's been around for a very long time, and we've partnered with HashiCorp to really give you an excellent developer experience. So let's look at the provisioning side here. So you use in provisioning with Terraform, you'll use something called HashiCorp configuration language. And it defines your resources. You can see there a resource and a resource name, and yet it gives you the ability to use higher level language constructs. So you can actually use depends on, count, for each provider lifecycle, and you can also use in the newer version string interpolation. So you can kind of use it as a nice little language. In this example here, we've got a resource group there, the name and some properties there. So that's the HashiCorp configuration language. Now you use the HashiCorp configuration language to create modules. So in this example here, I've got my project structure, and this is the demo that we're going to do. And in my project structure, you can see there, I've got my Terraform folder. And in my Terraform folder, I've got three files. I've got main.tf, outputs.tf, and variables.tf. I also have another folder here where we're going to define our GitHub Actions, and we'll come back to that. And the GitHub Actions here really is just provisioning, which is called Terraform, and then I've got a web app folder there that is going to do the build and deploy. So let's go through a little bit more detail of the Terraform files that you want to use. So the configuration files, you need to have a main.tf file that is required, and that's the structure in order to deploy the complete infrastructure directly through calls to modules. What that does, it gives you a basic flow of all of your resources and how to call each one of your resources. We also have other Terraform files. We have output, so a return value of a Terraform module. You might want to output the address for, and we'll see in the demo, of where your server is and what your site is. Then we've got variables here. If you want to use variables, you don't have to, and we're not going to use them in the demo. Sorry, Terraform.tf. So that's so that's assigned variables, and then we have variables.tf. Now we've got variables.tf here in the previous slide, and what we're going to do with that is we're going to define our app service name and also our name of our database and also application server. And you've got versions.tf if you want to do multiple versions of Terraform. So here's a nice example here. So main.tf, you can see there I've got my resource group here. I've got some variables there, name and location. And then I've got output.tf. It's going to give me the output of the resource group and also the resource group name. If I want to also look at TF vars, so that's just setting up my variables here, and it sets up my location. I've got a version.tf for the Terraform version, and then I've got variables.tf there, and you can see location, name, environment, and department. They're all set up, so my main module, my main.tf can call it. Let's go into a little bit more structure of the main.tf here. So in my main.tf, I can define a provider. And the provider there is Azure's resource. It might be AWS or Google. For in this example, we're talking about Azure. So Azure Resource Manager. Then I've also got the Terraform version. So Terraform required version. Then I've got some data tags. Now I might want to do data tags, and you can refer to data also as a database. So you might want to use files, storage, or data tags. I've got locals here, so local variables here. Then I've got my first resource group, and we saw before this is defining a resource group. The location is in West Europe. And then I've got a module here, and the module is a nice way to encapsulate also any type of built-in functions and also have a module within a module. You can see the module here is going to define some variables, and it's a nice way to encapsulate a set of configuration that you can reuse so you can see there reusability and complexity abstraction. A little bit more in the providers. So providers define how Terraform will interact with, and you can have a provider for cloud, infrastructure, network, version control, monitoring, or database. And you can see Azure is one of the many providers you can have. Infrastructure, you can do Kubernetes, Docker, Rancher, and you can do so many databases there. So that's the provider. Now, once you have all of that defined, you're going to want to use the Terraform workflow. And we're going to see a little bit more about this Terraform workflow because we're going to plug it into GitHub Actions. And GitHub Actions is going to call this workflow. So the main idea behind the workflow is that it keeps a state locally, or you can do it a remote state in storage. And the state defines on the life cycle of your underlying resources. So let's just say I initialize my state. I've got a server. Now I go, cool, validate the server state. Cool, the server's in the cloud right now. I'm happy with it. plan, what do you plan to do to the server? I plan to change the amount of CPUs as it, and then apply will actually go in, check that the state is that it doesn't have as many CPUs as you're asking for it, and then go modify that server and bring back the results for that. And right at the end of it, if you don't want to manage the state, then you destroy the state and you start again. So the three core state transitions are init, plan, and apply. Initialize, so a new state. Plan, what are you going to do? And then apply, which is that you're going to perform a change on the state. So once you have that, now you can actually integrate with the Terraform GitHub Actions. And what that allows you to do on your Terraform GitHub Actions is that you can now run your Terraform state inside a GitHub action. It'll pull in Terraform and perform your initialize, apply, and plan state for you inside GitHub. So it sets up the Terraform CLI and downloads the CLI and adds it to the path, configures the Terraform CLI, and then also exposes its standard out, standard error, and exit code, so you can actually see what happens in GitHub. Now, we need to see a structure of this. So normally with your workflow in your GitHub Actions, and that would be in the GitHub flow, you would have your, you can see that your workflow section, then each one would have a job section. Each job could have multiple steps, and then the steps would have a action that you want to do. You can see there that the action there would be HashiCorp setup Terraform, and they also are event driven. So let's have a look at examples of each of that. So here's the Terraform GitHub action. So it says there, the working directory is .terraform, and the steps is going to use actions checkout. It's first going to check out the Terraform config files. Then it's going to, the next action is setup Terraform. So it's going to do setup Terraform, and then it's going to call initialize. After that, plan, and then apply. And it's going to use auto approve there for apply, because this isn't a human workflow. So that really is how Terraform talks to GitHub Action. So I know what you're thinking. There's one more step that you want to do, because how does it actually talk to Azure? Now, Azure, the Terraform files will actually talk to Azure. GitHub Action doesn't know that it's talking to Azure. It just knows that it's executing some Terraform scripts. So once you've got that, you can see there, this is the sample application that we're going to go through, and it sets up the job that checks out the Terraform files, set up Terraform, initialize, plan, apply, and then it will complete the job. And all of this ran within 4 minutes to set up a database, provision the database, and also our application server. So you've got your provision of your resources now. Now we want to actually build and deploy them. And this typically is together, so it's built in together, but a lot of other places or a lot of the workflows might do it in separate steps. So you might want to, as you build and deploy, run a Maven or Gradle build. And I showed you on Tuesday how fast Gradle is. Today I'm actually going to run Maven, which is a little bit slower, but still good. And it's going to copy the artifacts to a staging directory and then publish the build artifacts into the web server that you've just created as part of your provision workflow. And you can actually get the build and deploy to be set up for you via the Azure Deployment Center. So if you choose Azure Deployment Center and you choose GitHub, it'll create the GitHub Actions for you automatically. And that's pretty nifty. So a lot of these scripts I'm going to show you today, you don't have to really are going to create them yourselves. And if you go to the demo code, it will be already kind of templated out, and you don't have to worry about that. So once you've got your build and deploy script, you can see here's the GitHub Actions. It's going to run on Ubuntu latest. It's going to use the checkout the files. It's going to set up your Java version, build with Maven, so Maven clean install, and then it's going to deploy to Azure Web App with the Azure GitHub Web Apps action. And then it's got your secrets, the publish profile, and your package that you're going to do. So this is the last bit of the GitHub Actions. So there's two GitHub Actions files. There's the provision file, and then the build and deploy. We also have our Terraform files that are sitting in our Terraform folder, and that really defines what we're going to build. And we're going to go through in the example of how we're going to set up our database and also our application server. So we're executing that now. And you can see there it's setting up the job, setting up the Java version, build with Maven, and then it deploys to the Azure Web App. And we've got our output there as part of our Terraform scripts, and that's the URL that we might get as part of our output for our application server. So that was 20 minutes of slides, and I hope that I kind of explained what the demo is going to do. Now we're going to get started on the demo, and this should take you, if you want to do this, 30 minutes. Don't do it now, but please start on this. I spent about a month and a bit getting the perfect balance of ease of use and also to help you understand it. So it's all available on https://aka.ms/github-java. You can also use that QR code if you want to snap that quickly there. And that'll take you through to the Microsoft Learn path based on this the slide deck, and you can go through the entire process yourself with an easily to follow and a pretty exciting Learn module on how to do that. So let's go here. And that's the end of the slide. So let's go see how you can actually get started in that Learn module. So the first thing that you want to do so that's the Learn module here, aka.ms github-java, and it's the rapidly deploy exactly like that, and it'll take you through to the details of what I defined, and then it also will help you provision your resources and start it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go to that GitHub repo, and you're going to do something called templating out. So if you paste that in here, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Now, this is a GitHub template, so the repo that you're going to do. So I'm going to go use this template, and this is everything I've prepared for you. I've got my GitHub workflows, the basic provision workflow. I've got my Terraform scripts. So I'm going to use this template, and then I'm going to call this here. I'm going to call this million Rory ZA. Okay, we'll call it that. Now, if I can do private or public, I'm going to do it public there. Create repository from template, and it's going to go create it for you. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to trigger the GitHub Actions immediately, but we need to go change that though. So the next step that you're going to do is that you're going to go change that and make it your own, and you're going to do that by adding a few settings. And also making sure that you have all the actions. Now I've got all of that settings already set up on the script here, and I've called that. Hold on one second. Let's go back there, and I want to find that version here. I have templated before, and I want to go back into Rory P, my GitHub repo, Rory P. There we go. And now this is my version that you can see there I've templated from here. Now, if you go into this version, the first thing you want to do is you want to set up a service principal. And the service principal here, let's go find that. The service principal defined in Chrome, you're going to run a little script. There we go. You're going to run a little script here that is going to create your service principal. Sorry, one second. Set up your workflow, GitHub secrets. There we go. So you're going to set up your client ID, your client secret, and your subscription and your tenant ID. And how you're going to do that is you're going to run a little script here, and it's going to create a variable, an account for you that Terraform and GitHub Actions can act on your underlying Azure account. So we can paste that in there. And you'll see there that it's going to just bring back, if I just do that, it's going to bring back a secret, a client ID, and other credentials there based on that name. Now, obviously, your service principal is not going to be that. It's not going to really like that there, that it likes it. So you're going to set it up, and then what you'll get back is that you're going to get back some parameters here. Let's go back here. You're going to set those parameters inside your settings here. So let's go into settings. You're going to set those settings here to allow your workflows to authenticate. So you're going to go into secrets. And then you can see here under secrets, I've got my client ID, which the service principal is going to break, my client secret, my subscription ID, which is the subscription for your Azure account, and then my tenant ID. So that way I can work on my GitHub Actions, and it can call Terraform and authenticate with me. So I've got that there. Now we're going to go back into our code, and you're going to go into your Terraform folder, and you're going to give your name, your your application and your resource group a name. So over here, I previously did this talk at the Dev Nexus, the largest Java conference in America, and I called it Reactor Dev Nexus, and then I also gave it a application name and a resource group name. So we've got our secrets, we've got our resource group name. Now that's kind of all that you really need to set up your actions. So if we do go back into our Terraform scripts here, you'll see there's the main.tf file. And let's go through the main.tf file and see exactly what it's going to do. So in your main.tf file here, you'll see there that I've got my provider as your resource manager. I set up my resource group there. I've got a random password that I can actually execute if I need to. Then I've got a SQL Server. So I'm going to use SQL Server to authenticate against a Spring Boot application. I've got the name, location, resource group, the administrative login, and then I've got the some parameters there, the size of it, the backup retention, and everything is set up for you. I've also got an instance, a MySQL database, because if you create a MySQL, you also need to create a MySQL database, and I set that up. And then I create a firewall, because I want to be able to access that internally to Azure resource groups. So I've got a firewall, and then I've got my app service plan that I create, and then I've got my app service, which is going to use Java and Java 8. And then I've got some nice settings. Now, I want to be able to run this locally, and you can with that project, but I also want to set a profile for MySQL so I can actually set the data source URL. So this will build your project in GitHub Actions and then publish it through to the Maven profile and build it. And when your app is published on your application server, it's going to use MySQL. But you can use the same project locally, and it uses an H2 database locally. So let's go back. So I've got this is my main.tf file, and the only other variable that you really have here is the outputs.variable, and that's going to give you application service name and your default host name. So that's everything set up though. So let's go into the project again, and that's my Terraform. Let's look at the GitHub Actions. Now the first one, the GitHub Actions, is the one I give you as part of the template file, and that's the main.yaml. The other one we're going to generate there as part of the what was that? A distribution center, deployment center, sorry. So the first one that we see here is that it gets the client secrets that we defined already there, so it can authenticate with Azure, and then it sets up Terraform and Terraform inits, plans, and then applies. So it knows, it's clever enough to know that if it's got all of those details there, then Terraform is going to use Azure, because we've got our Terraform files and it says app service, and it's clever enough to know, wait a second, I've got my secrets and my subscriptions and my tenant ID, and this is all I need. Now you're going to execute that, and it will execute on every pull request. So if I go into Actions, and I can see here I've got my Terraform file there, and I click through on that, you can see there that it's already run pretty nicely. I've got a basic kind of flow here. I set up my job, run my actions, set up Terraform in it, and we're gonna execute this. Don't worry, a little bit later. Plan and apply, and then right at the end, complete job. So when you go apply, you can see there that it should actually give you the name of the server right at the end there. It'll give you the name of the server. There we go. Reactor Dev Nexus RPZ. And if I click through that, I've already deployed the application there, but I'm going to redeploy it again with you a little bit later. And then you've got your application set up. And remember, this is going to be triggered. So the only thing you have to do is set up a service principal, go in and change your variables to the name that you want, and everything kind of just runs. Now, the next thing I want to show you, so I've got the application running there. Next, I want to generate the file that does the build and deploy. And I've got the file already there, and this build and deploy really just calls Maven, set up Java, and Maven clean install, and then web apps just deploys it there. And how I generated that on my little application server here, I've got my application server here. I go into my deployment center, and I just go next, and choose GitHub, and it generates it for me. And you want to do that because it's got a publish profile on it. And that publish profile is like a secret. So if you want to deploy it there, you need a kind of like the publish profile to be able to deploy it there. And you can go into settings, and you can see there it's a link to GitHub, and GitHub Actions, and you can go through all of that to be able to deploy and check out. Now I want to do a change now. I've got 8 minutes left. I want to do a change here. So I've got the actual repo, this repo here, checked out. So you can actually check it out with in GitHub Desktop or Code Spaces or locally here. And I've got it running here on my GitHub. Where were we? Let's go and find our, there we go, our Visual Studio Code. And we're going to maximize that, and we want to go there. Cool. So I've got my Terraform files, I've got all of my files here, and now I've got my GitHub Actions. You can see it's exactly what we saw on GitHub Actions. Now I want to make a change to that. So if I go into my source folder here, I want to make a small little change, and I want to push it. Now, when we push it, because we, on our main.yaml, we've got it on a trigger here, and you can see here, the Terraform scripts will only run push on branches or on pull request. Sorry, not the Terraform. Let's go here. There we go. So it will build on all of the pushes, but it will only really run the Terraform script if you have a pull request and it's on that that path Terraform. So it won't run all the time though. So I want to make a change to it here. So if I go into my resources, I want to just make a change to a template here. And I can change, make a change here on messages. And I want to say on my messages here, instead of welcome developers, welcome 1 million, let's go, million Arab coders. Spelt that there. And then I can check that in. Let's go check that in here. I want to not do the Terraform lock. Let's add that to git ignore quickly. To git ignore, thank you very much. And now the message is there, so I can go message, check, commit that. Now, as soon as I do that, and I push that, it's going to trigger the GitHub action to go in and, first of all, if I wanted to the first time, it would go say, go create your database, but it's going to go and trigger my build for me on my script here. So let's go into actions here. Where's actions? Now you'll see here it's going to trigger the action. There we go. It's got triggered my action there 12 seconds ago, and it's going to build and deploy, and I can click on that. And this is because the Terraform action isn't triggered on every time I do a pull request. Rather, it's only triggered on if I haven't created the repo and I do an initial repo creation. So when you do this as part of your exercise, your homework that I'm going to do, give you, then please go in and create it, and you will be able to rinse and repeat and do this entire exercise. So this should take about, let's see what the previous version did, and then we can see the previous runs, and you can see the previous runs that you have here. So I think this takes about 3 minutes. So message, this takes about 3 minutes and 41 seconds, which is great because we actually have that time going through. So most of it is going to run Maven, so it's going to pull out a lot of Maven dependencies, and we saw 2 days ago that Gradle's a little bit more performant of that. So it's going to build with the Maven, it's going to create our jar file for us, and then it's going to pop it and throw it into our Azure web app folder. Let's go look at exactly what this app does while it's doing that. So I've got my folder here, and what this app does, it pulls a list of pets. It's a pet clinic, and we've got a MySQL database there that pulls it. So you've got your model with your owners, your vets, and your vet visits, and then you've got a little MySQL a profile that you're going to create as part of your Terraform folder. So main.tf here. Remember, it's going to create a MySQL active profile, and that MySQL active profile is going to point to your production server that you have there. And then what you're going to get once you deploy that is you're going to get a MySQL database, a Spring application, a firewall, and also the web app that you can actually execute. So let's go look at it while it's busy running here. Let's go look at what that looks like. And this is the end results that you have here. I'm going to browse this. And you can see there, I said, welcome developers, and you've got find owners here. Now, this is pulling from MySQL, the MySQL database that you'll create as part of the Terraform scripts, find owners, and then you've got all of those owners that you have here. And this entire execution profile, if you do it correct from the beginning, you never have to touch the application. You never have to touch the code, actually. You can just change the variables and give it a secret, and you can just execute it into the ether. You never even have to touch it locally on your PC. So let's go back and see the status of our application. There we go. It's still building with Maven. 2 minutes and 34 seconds here. So while we are doing that, let's also look at the actual exercise here. So we've got, and it defines all of that. It defines your repository. It gives you an overview of the actual script we're going to use, set up your workflow, your GitHub secrets, and then it'll tell you the next thing you can do is deploy a Spring Boot app. So you're going to go into that, and it'll run through how to use the deployment center, go through all the selection criteria. It'll give you the script that we mentioned before and how to use that script, and then confirm the GitHub Actions build. And this is really, at the end of what we're going to do now, what we're going to see. So deploy to Azure Web App, and that also took about 2 minutes and 13 seconds there. And then the next step is you can actually go and make this into production code, or you can also delete it. So remember, this is going to cost you with the MySQL database. If you run it today, it's not going to really cost you more than cents. But if you leave it on for an extended period of time, rather go and delete your resource group and also the underlying service principal. Delete the service principal, because that gives you authorization to do a lot of things on your account. So let's go back there onto our message there. Build with Maven. Of course, in the demo, it's going to take a few more minutes after that, but we'll get our execution eventually go through that, and then we'll get our message. So let's take some questions while we're waiting, and then we'll see once it finishes, we'll go in and look at our application, and it should actually say welcome 1 million Arab coders. Tarek, do we have any questions? Any questions? So we've got our deploy. You can see there our deploy to Azure Web App there. So it's built with Maven. It's got the Java archive, and now it's going to. Oh, there we go. Hey, that was quick. It's done the post checkout, yeah. Now we should be able to go back into our application, into our Pet Clinic application. Click on the front there, and it should actually have a different view. Let's go refresh. Okay, it might be taking a while, but the complete of the job then will execute that. Let's just make sure that we've got deployed to Azure app there. Okay, so we did do that. I might have actually not made too many edits there, but you got your application deployed there, and you can go in and change it in multiple ways. There we go. Yay! Welcome to 1 million Arab coders. Now we've got a CI/CD pipeline. We've already created our Terraform builds, and that's really what I wanted to show you today. The architecture of what we wanted to do. You can access all of this. Let's go start play from current slide. You can access all of the things that I said there, aka.ms/github-java. All of it is available there. We keep it up to date. You'll be able to template out your script, create your Terraform variable, and also Terraform workflow, and also your GitHub workflow. Thank you so much today. We're a little bit out of time, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Tarek, and the Coders Talk and 1 million Arab coders. And I'll see you very soon. I had such a great time. Thanks, everyone, and goodbye.